The galactic mediation chamber hung in the emptiness of space, like a glittering teardrop suspended in time. For over 3 centuries, this massive crystalline structure had been the nexus of interstellar diplomacy. Its vast halls witnessed to thousands of peace treaties, trade agreements, and territorial negotiations. The chamber's design was itself a monument to compromise, constructed by 17 different species, using materials from 32 solar systems. Its architecture reflected the diverse needs of the galaxy's dominant civilizations. Gravity fields could be adjusted for beings from high or low-gravity worlds. Atmospheric composition could shift from methane to oxygen to chlorine within segregated zones. And temperature gradients allowed desert-evolved species to negotiate with those from ice planets without discomfort. Today, the chamber's central negotiation hall hummed with barely contained tension. 5 of the galaxy's most feared warlords had agreed to attend peace talks after a decade-long conflict that had decimated hundreds of habitable worlds. The Mediators, a race of crystalline beings known as the Tholians, had spent months preparing the diplomatic ground. Every detail had been meticulously arranged according to the sacred protocols of interstellar mediation. A document so complex it required quantum computing to track all its clauses and subclauses. "The Croxian battle prime approaches," announced a Tholian aide, their crystalline form shimmering with anxiety. "Defensive screens at 20% as agreed." Through the northern portal strode the first warlord, the Croxian battle prime Goroth. Standing nearly 3 meters tall with armored hide resembling a rhinoceros crossed with a mantis, Goroth commanded the mighty Croxian armada, a fleet notorious for reducing entire moons to rubble when negotiations proved unsatisfactory. The battle prime's small, intelligent eyes scanned the chamber as a team of 30 adjutants followed in precise formation, each carrying components of what would become Goroth's negotiation throne. "The Croxian battle prime acknowledges the neutrality of this chamber," rumbled Goroth, completing the ritual greeting. "May our words prove sharper than our weapons." The Tholian chief mediator bowed precisely 15 degrees, the exact angle specified for greeting a Class 3 military potentate. "The chamber acknowledges the Croxian battle prime. Your position is prepared according to Section 7.3 of the Accords." No sooner had Goroth taken position when the eastern portal shimmered with a strange, rippling light. Thousands of tiny, iridescent creatures poured into the room, flowing like liquid before coalescing into a roughly humanoid shape, standing 2 meters tall. "The Vorak swarm speaker manifests," announced another Tholian aide. The being composed of thousands of insectoid components buzzed with a sound like static electricity. "The many as one acknowledges this neutral ground. We speak with unified voice." The creatures rearranged slightly, forming what approximated a face with glittering compound eyes. "We seek resolution that benefits the greater hive of galactic life." The Vorak swarm was perhaps the most feared of all the warlords present. Their philosophy of beneficial assimilation had led them to incorporate dozens of sentient species into their collective consciousness, not always with consent. Entire planetary populations had been converted into Vorak components, their individual minds subsumed into the greater hive intelligence. Next came a shimmer of darkness that seemed to bend light around it. The Zeltharian Voidwalker materialized like a tear in reality, their form constantly shifting between solid matter and something else entirely. Commander of the nomadic Zeltharian fleet. This being represented 17 billion nomads who recognized no borders, claimed no homeworld, and considered the concept of territorial sovereignty to be a primitive delusion. "The void between stars is our birthright," intoned the Voidwalker, their voice echoing as if from multiple locations simultaneously. "We acknowledge this temporary cessation of rightful wandering." The fourth arrival caused the chamber's quantum stabilizers to whine in protest. The Quantum Syndicate representative existed partially in this dimension and partially in several others. Their form, a cascade of probabilities, rather than fixed matter. A collective of energy beings who had evolved beyond conventional physics. The Syndicate waged war across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Their strategies were unfathomable to linear thinkers, operating on scales of time and space that most species couldn't comprehend. "This moment, nexus is acknowledged," said the representative, their words somehow arriving in each listener's mind before they were spoken. Probability matrices indicate 78.3% likelihood of suboptimal outcome. Last to arrive was the Iron Council delegate, a towering construct of metal and energy representing an entirely mechanical civilization. Once created by an organic species long extinct, the self-replicating machines had evolved beyond their programming to become a dominant force in the galaxy. Their processing cores calculated the most efficient path to victory in any conflict, unhampered by emotions or biological needs. "Operational parameters set to negotiation mode," announced the delegate, its voice a perfect modulation of harmonics designed to put organic beings at ease, a calculated tactic that only made most species more uncomfortable. Resources allocated to diplomatic subroutines. The Tholian chief mediator glittered with nervous energy as they addressed the assembled warlords. "The 5 signatories to the preliminary cessation of hostilities have assembled as agreed. We await only the observer from the newly contacted species, known as humans. Their ship was detected entering the neutral zone 17 standard minutes ago." A ripple of electromagnetic communication passed between the warlords, something between amusement and contempt. "The humans," rumbled Gorath. "Barely 6 months since first contact, and already they presume to sit among powers that have shaped the galaxy for millennia." The Vorak swarm speaker's composite form shimmered. "Their neural patterns are chaotic, uncoordinated. They resist beneficial unity. Puzzling. Their space-time signature is peculiar," noted the Voidwalker. "They traverse the void with primitive technology, yet somehow arrive where they intend." The Quantum Syndicate representative's form flickered. "Their probability nexus exhibits anomalous patterns. Unpredictable. Interesting. Their silicon constructs are crude," stated the Iron Council delegate. "Yet they assign them names and speak to them as companions. Inefficient." The Tholian mediator raised crystalline appendages for silence. "The human representative will be granted observer status only, as agreed in the preliminary protocols. They will not participate in the negotiation of terms. Their presence is merely a courtesy extended to newly spacefaring species, as per the Galactic Charter." At that moment, a small chime indicated an arrival at the chamber's southern portal, the least prestigious entrance, traditionally reserved for minor diplomatic staff and service drones. "Curious," said the mediator. "The human appears to have bypassed the formal reception sequence." The portal irised open, and into the grand chamber walked a single human figure. Later, historians would debate whether the fate of the negotiations was sealed in that first moment, when the human envoy strolled into the galactic mediation chamber 17 minutes late, wearing what appeared to be a simple blue suit, carrying nothing but a plain briefcase, and smiling as if arriving at a friend's dinner party rather than the most significant peace conference in a generation. "Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm late," called the human, voice echoing in the vast chamber, designed to amplify the gravitas of formal diplomatic pronouncements. "The transit system here is amazing, but the directional guides aren't calibrated for human visual perception. Took a wrong turn at what I thought was the reception area." The 5 warlords, each accustomed to inspiring terror across multiple star systems, stared in unified bewilderment as the human approached the central negotiation area with a casual gait. 300 years of diplomatic protocol demanded that new arrivals first complete the ritual of acknowledged neutrality, followed by formal introductions through the chief mediator, culminating in the ceremony of seated hierarchy. The human did none of these things. Instead, They walked directly toward the Croxian battle prime and extended a hand. "I'm Alex Jensen, Earth Diplomatic Corps. You must be the Croxian battle prime? Impressive armor. Is that natural or augmented? Either way, absolutely stunning craftsmanship. Goroth, veteran of 342 major battles, conqueror of the Antares cluster, the being whose name was used to frighten disobedient children on 1,000 worlds, found themselves automatically extending a massive, armored claw in response. Natural dermal plating, rumbled the battle prime, before catching themselves. The Croxian hegemony acknowledges the human observer. Fascinating, said Alex, appearing genuinely interested. Evolutionary adaptation or engineered trait? Our xenobiologist would love to know how it handles kinetic impacts without transferring shock to internal organs. Before Goroth could formulate a response, no being had ever inquired about Croxian physiology in a peace conference. The human had already moved on to the Vorak swarm speaker. "And you must be the Vorak Collective. I've been reading everything our databases have on your distributed consciousness model. Quick question. Does each component maintain an individual awareness? Or is it more like a neural network where consciousness emerges at the macro level?" The thousands of tiny creatures comprising the swarm speaker rippled with what might have been confusion. "We are many as one." The question reflects limited singular thinking. "Maybe," Alex nodded thoughtfully. "But I wonder if that's a limitation or just a different perspective. Humans have individual consciousness, but we form emergent systems too. Economies, cultures, social movements. Different scale, similar principle perhaps?" The swarm speaker's components reorganized rapidly, processing this unexpected comparison. Meanwhile, the Tholian mediator had abandoned their prescribed script and was frantically consulting an emergency protocol crystal. Nothing in the 300-year history of the mediation chamber had prepared them for a diplomatic observer who simply walked around making casual conversation with galactic warlords. The human continued their circuit, approaching the Zeltharian Voidwalker with undimmed enthusiasm. "The famous Zeltharians. Your space-time folding technology is legendary. Does it feel different? Subjectively, I mean, to exist partially in folded space. Does conventional causality still apply from your perspective?" The void. Walker's form rippled. "Human perception is limited. You experience reality as linear. We do not." "That's exactly what I was wondering about," exclaimed Alex. "Linear perception seems so constraining once you consider the alternatives. Do you think it's possible for humans to learn to perceive reality more like you do? Or is it hardwired into our biology?" The void. Walker's form appeared to solidify slightly, a sign of intense focus rarely seen in their kind. "An interesting question. No species has previously expressed desire to perceive as we do." Before the Voidwalker could elaborate, Alex had moved on to the Quantum Syndicate representative, whose form flickered through probability states at an accelerated rate, their equivalent of nervous agitation. "The quantum beings. I've been dying to meet your kind," said Alex. "Quick question. When you calculate battle strategies across multiple probability streams, do you optimize for a single perfect outcome or for the highest average benefit across all possible futures?" The representative's form stabilized momentarily, an unprecedented event observed by the chamber's monitoring systems. "Both. Neither. The question assumes temporal linearity." "Right, of course," nodded Alex thoughtfully. "I suppose from your perspective, all outcomes exist simultaneously, and victory is just collapsing the waveform in your favor. Fascinating approach." Finally, Alex approached the Iron Council delegate, who had been calculating optimal responses to this unprecedented diplomatic situation, running 17 million simulations per second. "The autonomous machine civilization. Your processing architecture must be incredible," said Alex. Do you experience something analogous to emotions, or is your decision-making purely logical? The delegate's optical sensors adjusted focus. Emotion is inefficient. We optimize for resource allocation and strategic advantage. But isn't optimization itself a value judgment? Asked Alex, head tilted curiously. And don't values imply some form of preference structure that could be analogous to simplified emotions? I mean, if you value efficiency, isn't that conceptually similar to humans valuing happiness? The delegate's cooling systems activated audibly, the machine equivalent of a surprised intake of breath. The Tholian mediator finally managed to interject, their crystalline form vibrating with distress. Human observer Jensen, there are formal protocols for— "Oh, I'm so sorry," said Alex, turning to the mediator with an apologetic smile. "I didn't mean to disrupt the proceedings. Please, carry on with the formal introductions." But the damage, or perhaps the miracle, was already done. The 5 warlords, beings who commanded forces capable of sterilizing entire solar systems, who had spent centuries perfecting the arts of intimidation and strategic positioning, found themselves in an unprecedented state. They were intrigued. The Tholian mediator attempted to salvage the situation, their voice modulated to project reassuring formality. As per Section 12 of the Preliminary Accord, we shall begin with the ritual of positional declaration, followed by the statement of grievances, then proceed to— "Actually," interrupted Alex, "before we get started with all that, I brought some things to share." The human placed their briefcase on the auxiliary communication terminal, a priceless artifact constructed from neutronium and quantum crystal, and clicked it open. The chamber's defensive systems immediately went to full alert, scanning for weapons or prohibited technology. The warlord's personal security systems likewise activated, preparing countermeasures against potential attack. What emerged from the briefcase, however, were not weapons. "I thought since we might be here a while, we could use some refreshments," said Alex, pulling out several containers. "I wasn't sure about dietary compatibility, so I brought a variety. These are called cookies, wheat flour with sweetener and flavor compounds. These are dried fruits from Earth, and this is trail mix, a combination of nuts, dried fruits, and chocolate. Oh, and I brought some water filtered to universal consumption standards." The 5 most feared beings in the galaxy stared at the display of homemade snacks, arranged neatly on what was supposed to be the document authentication platform. "Please, help yourselves," said Alex, opening the containers. "The chocolate chip cookies are especially good, family recipe." In the vast and ancient chamber, designed to accommodate the complex rituals of interstellar diplomacy, a profound silence fell. The Tholian mediator's crystalline structure had frozen in a pattern that their species used to express extreme confusion. The warlords exchanged glances, or their species' equivalent of glances. The Croxian battle prime was the first to react, massive form shifting as internal command neural clusters fired in conflicting patterns. This is not protocol." "Oh, is there a problem with sharing food?" asked Alex, genuinely concerned. "On Earth, it's a universal gesture of friendship and hospitality. Is it considered offensive here?" "Not offensive," the battle prime rumbled. "Unprecedented." The human looked relieved. "That's good to hear. Would you like to try one? I know your species can process carbon-based nutrition." Goroth, whose digestive system could process metal if necessary, looked at the small, round disc being offered. In 3 centuries of conquest, no being had ever offered the battle prime food without first testing it on a dozen expendable subjects. The concept of sharing sustenance as equals was entirely foreign to Croxian diplomatic understanding. The Vorex swarm speaker's components rippled with rapid communication. "Your offering is curious. You seek nutritional alliance?" "I wouldn't go that far," laughed Alex. It's just a cookie. But yes, sharing food is a human way of building connection. The tiny components that made up the swarm speaker rearranged themselves, some breaking off to approach the cookie, examining it from multiple angles simultaneously. The Zeltharian Void. Walker's form solidified further, a sign of extreme interest. Your species seeks to establish trust through voluntary vulnerability. Primitive but elegant. That's a lovely way of putting it, Alex smiled, offering a container of dried fruits toward the Voidwalker. Would you like to try these? They might be compatible with your partially material form. The Quantum Syndicate representative's probability cascade slowed dramatically as they focused on the offered food. Calculating compatible consumption parameters. Unexpected gesture requires recalibration of intent models. The Iron Council delegates' optical sensors scanned the array of food items with increasing intensity. Query: is this attempted bribery or genuine cultural exchange protocol? Neither, really, said Alex, appearing amused. It's just a friendly gesture. Food tastes good, sharing feels good. It's pretty straightforward. The delegates' processing cores whirred audibly. Simplicity is strategy. Calculating implications. The Tholian mediator finally recovered enough to speak. Observer Jensen, the protocols of interstellar mediation do not include provisions for unregulated exchange of biological materials during formal proceedings. Oh, I see, said Alex, looking genuinely apologetic. I should have checked first. Where I come from. It's considered a bit rude to have a long meeting without offering some refreshments. But I completely understand if it goes against protocol here. The human began to close the containers, and something unprecedented occurred. Goroth, the Croxian battle prime, extended a massive armored claw. Wait, rumbled the warlord. I will sample this cookie substance. The battle prime delicately took a chocolate chip cookie between two enormous armored digits and brought it to their sensory analysis organs. After a moment of hesitation, they consumed it in a single bite. The chamber fell silent again as the most feared Croxian warrior in 1,000 years processed the experience of tasting a homemade chocolate chip cookie for the first time. This contains processed plant matter, animal secretions, and sweetening compounds, stated Goroth. There was another moment of silence. It is not unpleasant. Alex beamed. I'm so glad you like it. My grandmother's recipe. The secret is browning the butter first. Something shifted in the atmosphere of the galactic mediation chamber at that moment. Historians would later debate whether it was the casual sharing of food, the mention of a grandmother, a concept universally understood across thousands of species, or simply the accumulated effect of the human's genuine interest in each warlord as an individual rather than as a strategic opponent. Whatever the cause, the carefully orchestrated peace conference began to unravel. The Vorax swarm speaker's components had completely surrounded their cookie, examining it from all angles. Several broke off and appeared to be consuming small portions, reporting findings back to the main collective. Interesting chemical composition, nutritionally inefficient yet satisfying. We have not encountered this combination before. The Zeltharian Voidwalker had partially materialized a manipulative appendage to sample the dried fruits. These contain memories of sunlight. The trees remember growing toward stars, different from our wandering paths. The Quantum Syndicate representative had entered a state of focused probability analysis. Their form, almost completely stable, something no diplomat had ever witnessed. This exchange creates connection nodes across multiple potential futures. Unexpected. Probability matrices require substantial revision. Even the Iron Council delegate had extended a precision sampling probe to analyze the trail mix. Detected 27 distinct organic compounds, including theobromine. Inefficient delivery of nutrients, but pattern recognition subroutines flag this as pleasant. As the warlords cautiously sampled the humans' offerings, Alex continued casual conversation, asking questions about their home systems, their technological achievements, their cultural practices, not as intelligence gathering, but with genuine curiosity. No mention was made of the decade-long war that had brought them to this chamber. No reference to contested territories or resource disputes. The Tholian mediator, witnessing the complete collapse of centuries of diplomatic protocol, attempted one final intervention. Esteemed delegates, we must proceed to the formal negotiation phase. The first item on the agenda concerns the disputed Rigelian border zone. It was at this precise moment that the Croxian Battle Prime's communication implant chimed with an incoming transmission. The warlord raised a massive claw. I must attend to this. After a brief internal communication, Goroth rose to their full height. A situation has developed that requires my immediate attention. The Third Fleet reports gravitational anomalies in the Proxima sector. I must withdraw from these proceedings temporarily. Before the mediator could respond, the Vorak swarm speaker's form rippled with what appeared to be agitation. We, too, must withdraw. A synaptic cascading event has been detected in the primary hive nexus. Immediate attention is required to maintain collective stability. The Zeltharian Voidwalker's form was already becoming less substantial. Space-time distortions have been detected along our primary migration routes. The fleet must adjust course immediately to avoid dimensional instability. The Quantum Syndicate representative flickered rapidly through probability states. A critical junction point has emerged requiring simultaneous intervention across multiple timelines. Our presence is necessary to prevent catastrophic probability collapse. The Iron Council delegate's optical sensors dimmed momentarily as it processed internal communications. System-wide maintenance protocols have been unexpectedly initiated. Resource allocation requirements necessitate immediate return to primary processing hubs. In less than 60 seconds, all 5 warlords had presented reasons, each more implausible than the last, why they needed to immediately withdraw from the peace conference that had taken 2 years to arrange. The Tholian mediator's crystalline form vibrated with distress. But the protocols, the negotiations, the treaties? Perhaps we can reconvene at a later date, suggested Alex, still holding half a cookie. These emergencies sound quite serious. It would be irresponsible to ignore them. The warlords, seemingly grateful for the humans' understanding, made hasty preparations to depart. As they did, each found themselves exchanging final words with the human envoy. Your cookie substance was acceptable, rumbled Goroth. Perhaps we could discuss this browning of butter process when time allows. I'd be delighted, smiled Alex. And I'd love to hear more about Croxian culinary traditions too. The Vorak swarm speaker rippled in what might have been embarrassment. The concept of individual familial recipes is intriguing. The many as one has not considered the value of such variations. Diversity often leads to wonderful innovations, offered Alex. I'd be happy to share more recipes with your collective whenever you'd like. The Zeltharian Voidwalker, now barely visible, paused before fully dematerializing. Your perception may be linear, but your understanding transcends expected parameters. That's possibly the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me, Alex replied with genuine warmth. Safe travels through the void. The Quantum Syndicate representative, nearly stable in form, addressed the human directly. In 94.3% of probability streams, this encounter leads to unexpected positive outcomes. We will recalculate our approach to human interaction. I look forward to many more positive interactions across all probable futures, said Alex with a small bow. The Iron Council delegate's optical sensors focused one final time on the human. Query: would additional cookie samples be available for more comprehensive analysis at a future meeting? Absolutely, laughed Alex. I'll bring a whole batch next time. Within 30 minutes, the Grand Galactic Mediation Chamber, which had been booked for a 14-day intensive negotiation, stood empty, save for the human envoy and the bewildered Tholian mediator. "I don't understand," said the crystalline being, their structure vibrating with confusion. 300 years of diplomatic proceedings, and nothing like this has ever occurred. Alex Jensen, Earth's first representative to galactic peace talks, looked thoughtfully at the empty chamber while finishing the last bite of cookie. "Well," said the human, closing the now empty containers and returning them to the briefcase. "Technically speaking, since all parties have withdrawn from the conflict negotiation without making any demands, doesn't that constitute a de facto peace agreement?" The Tholian mediator's crystalline structure vibrated as they processed this logic. From a certain perspective, yes, with no parties present to dispute territories or resources. The status quo is maintained without hostilities. "Then I'd call that a successful first day," said Alex with a smile, closing the briefcase. "Peace achieved, and we didn't even have to go through all those protocols. Would you like the last cookie?" The mediator, for the first time in their 300-year diplomatic career, found themselves at a complete loss for words. 6 months later, on a small conference table in the Earth Diplomatic Corps headquarters, a classified report sat before the Secretary General. The document detailed the aftermath of what had become known in diplomatic circles as the Cookie Summit. The Croxian hegemony had withdrawn all military forces from disputed border regions, citing fleet restructuring priorities. The Vorak swarm had ceased all assimilation activities, instead opening limited cultural exchange programs with several species. The Zeltharian fleet had established predictable migration patterns that avoided populated systems. The Quantum Syndicate had begun offering limited probability calculation services to other species as a gesture of multidimensional cooperation. And perhaps most surprisingly, the Iron Council had initiated a biological needs assessment program aimed at better understanding organic species. The galaxy was experiencing its most peaceful period in recorded history. "Remarkable," said the Secretary General, looking up from the report. "And you believe this was all because of cookies?" Alex Jensen, recently promoted to Chief of Extraterrestrial Diplomatic Relations, shrugged modestly. "Not the cookies specifically. I think it was more about treating them as people, or beings, rather than adversaries. They're all used to being feared, to intimidation tactics and strategic positioning. None of them knew how to respond to simple friendliness. So your assessment is that basic human courtesy completely disarmed 5 of the most dangerous warlords in the galaxy?" "That's oversimplifying it," said Alex. "But essentially, yes. They're all used to dealing with beings who want something from them or fear them. Nobody had ever just asked them questions about themselves out of genuine curiosity or shared food without an ulterior motive." The Secretary General leaned back in their chair. "And your recommendation for future diplomatic encounters?" Alex smiled. "More cookies wouldn't hurt. But beyond that, treat them like people, not strategic objectives. Ask questions. Show genuine interest. Share a little bit of humanity. It turns out that might be our greatest diplomatic asset." "And what about the grandiose diplomatic protocols? The elaborate ceremonies? The strategic negotiating positions our team spent months developing?" "With all due respect," said Alex, "I think we might be better off keeping things simple. From what I've seen, the galaxy could use a little more straightforward human warmth and a lot less posturing." The Secretary General nodded slowly. "I suppose it's hard to argue with results, though I can already hear the diplomatic corps having fits about throwing out centuries of negotiation theory." "We don't have to throw everything out," Alex offered. "But maybe we can add bring snacks and be genuinely curious to the official protocol." "Consider it done," said the Secretary General with a rare smile. "Though I suspect your approach can't be taught in diplomatic academies. Some people just have a knack for making friends." Alex shrugged again. "I wouldn't overthink it. Sometimes the universe just needs a cookie and a friendly conversation." As news of the unprecedented peace settlement spread throughout the galaxy, other species began to regard humans with a mixture of curiosity, respect, and a touch of wariness. What sort of beings could disarm 5 warlords with nothing more than baked goods and casual conversation? What strategic brilliance lay behind their seemingly naive approach? The truth, of course, was that there was no strategy at all, just the simple human instinct to connect, to share, to find common ground over food and conversation. In a galaxy grown accustomed to power plays and calculated moves, genuine warmth had proven the most disarming tactic of all. In the grand galactic mediation chamber, now quiet after centuries of tense negotiations, the Tholian archivists made a small but significant change to the sacred protocols of interstellar mediation. Section 47, subsection 12 now included a new clause. When all else fails, cookies may be offered as a gesture of goodwill. Chocolate chip is preferred, but alternatives should be available for diverse biochemical requirements. The massive Croxian battle prime Goroth stood on the observation deck of their flagship, gazing out at the stars. In one massive claw, they held a small data crystal containing the recipe for Grandmother Jensen's chocolate chip cookies, complete with notes on the proper browning of butter. In 3 centuries of conquest, no opponent had ever managed what a single human with a briefcase had accomplished, making the mighty warlord question the path of endless conflict. Goroth rumbled thoughtfully. Computer, requisition ingredients for Earth recipe, chocolate chip cookies. Priority Alpha. Across the galaxy, in the heart of the Vorak Hive Nexus, the swarm speaker's components arranged themselves in the pattern used for deep philosophical contemplation. The concept of individual family recipes had sparked an unprecedented debate within the collective consciousness. If diversity of approach could create superior food, could it not also create superior solutions to other problems? The implications were cascading through the hive mind, challenging millennia of assimilation doctrine. In the void between stars, the Zeltharian fleet adjusted its course to avoid a densely populated system. The Voidwalker remembered the humans' genuine interest in their perception of reality, not as a tactical advantage, but simply to understand. In 3,000 years of wandering, no being had ever simply wanted to know what it was like to be Zeltharian. The memory of dried fruit, carrying the encoded sunlight of a distant world, lingered in their consciousness. In their multidimensional nexus, the Quantum Syndicate representative reviewed probability streams where conflict with humans might occur. In every scenario, the unpredictable nature of human response created chaotic outcomes impossible to optimize against. But more interestingly, the scenarios where cooperation was attempted showed a 97.8% probability of mutually beneficial outcomes. The Syndicate, for the first time in its existence, adjusted its strategic parameters to prioritize cooperation over conquest when dealing with humans. And in the central processing hub of the Iron Council, a new subroutine had been established. Initial research into cookies had expanded into a broader investigation of human social bonding rituals. The autonomous machines, designed for perfect logical efficiency, found themselves confronting a paradox. The seemingly inefficient human customs of hospitality and curiosity appeared to yield results that cold calculation could not predict or counter. The concept required further study. In a small apartment kitchen on Earth, Alex Jensen measured flour for a new batch of cookies. Tomorrow would bring another diplomatic meeting, this time with a coalition of crystalline beings from the Andromeda Galaxy, known for their rigid hierarchical society and resistance to change. The official briefing materials ran to thousands of pages of strategic analysis and suggested negotiating positions. Alex had skimmed them, then set them aside to focus on perfecting a new recipe. Oatmeal raisin, this time, a bit controversial in some circles. But sometimes the best diplomacy required taking risks. As the first batch baked, filling the apartment with a warm, comforting aroma. Alex reflected on the strange twist of fate that had turned a simple family tradition into an interstellar peace strategy. Perhaps there was a profound lesson here about the nature of conflict and connection, about how the smallest gestures of genuine humanity could accomplish what fleets of warships could not. Or perhaps it was simpler than that. Perhaps, throughout the vast and diverse galaxy, everyone just needed a cookie sometimes. The oven timer chimed, and Earth's most effective diplomat prepared for another peace conference, armed with nothing more threatening than freshly baked goods and genuine curiosity about the beings who shared this vast, complicated universe. Meanwhile, in the archives of the Galactic Mediation Chamber, the record of the shortest and most successful peace conference in history contained only 2 official entries. Human diplomatic envoy Alex Jensen arrives, and, 17 minutes later, all parties withdraw without conflict. Peace established. Between these entries, where detailed accounts of the negotiations should have been, the Tholian archivists had added only a single, unprecedented notation. Cookies were shared. In diplomatic academies across the galaxy, scholars would debate for centuries what complex strategy the humans had employed. What masterful psychological warfare had caused 5 of the most feared warlords in known space to simultaneously abandon their conquests. Elaborate theories were developed about secret Earth technologies, about hidden psychic abilities, about quantum manipulation tactics. None of these theories came close to the simple truth that in a galaxy grown cold with calculation and fear, a moment of genuine warmth and connection had accomplished what centuries of strategic positioning could not. And so began humanity's reputation as the most dangerous, or perhaps the most enlightened, diplomats in the galaxy. Armed with nothing more than curiosity, kindness, and occasionally baked goods, they would go on to resolve conflicts thought impossible to settle, to forge alliances between ancient enemies, and to gradually transform the very nature of interstellar relations. All because, when first invited to observe galactic peace talks, they had decided that the proper protocol was simply to be human. The Grand Galactic Mediation Chamber would host thousands more negotiations in the centuries to come. But its most legendary moment, the 17 minutes that changed the course of interstellar history, would always be known as the time when 5 warlords resigned without explanation, and peace was achieved over cookies and conversation. In the vastness of space, amid the complex dance of power and politics that spanned the stars, it turned out that the most revolutionary diplomatic strategy was also the simplest, treating even your enemies as people worth knowing, and bringing snacks to share. As Alex would later explain to classes of bemused diplomatic trainees, the universe is vast and complicated. People, whatever form they take, are often scared and lonely, even the scary ones. Sometimes, they just need someone to see them as more than an adversary. And honestly, it never hurts to bring cookies.